Hey all, new day, new verse as we continue on into Matthew. Today we are picking up chapter 27. We are doing verses 1 through 10 about Judas hanging himself. And there are a couple questions that popped into my head when I was going through study, even again today. Every day picking up a new and turn it again. There's always something new to see. I started thinking about why Matthew wrote the way he did, thinking about kingdom and prophecy and saying, no, this is already written out, God's already over it, the kingdom way of looking is a little different. And it started me thinking about a couple of questions in here, so let's dig into it together and have a discussion, if nothing else. And seriously, chat in the comments. I want to be able to have a conversation because the best place for these things is in a conversation so we can learn and grow. Not attacking each other, not casting each other down, not beating each other up. Just having these discussion moments. Because the pursuit is not one-upsmanship or being the greater or say, oh, look at me, I won the debate. It's one of those, okay, let's actually get to understanding something. So let's dig into Matthew 27. Here we go. Very early in the morning, the leading priests and the elders of people met again to lay plans, for putting Jesus to death. Then they bound him, led him away, and took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, realized that Jesus had been condemned to die, he was filled with remorse. So he took the 30 pieces of silver back to the leading priests and elders. I have sinned, he declared, for I have betrayed an innocent man. What do we care, they retorted. That's your problem. Then Judas threw the silver coins down in the temple and went out and hanged himself. The leading priests picked up the coins. It wouldn't be right to put this money in the treasury, they said, since it is the price for blood. After some discussion, they finally decided to buy the potter's field, and they made it into a cemetery for foreigners. That is why the field is still called the Field of Blood. This fulfilled the prophecy of Jeremiah that says, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price for which he was valued by the people of Israel, and purchased the potter's field, as the Lord directed. So there were a couple of thoughts that came to me here about Judas for a moment, not as saying he did right in any way, shape, or form, not evaluating his actions, more pondering about the nature of the Lord when it comes to Judas. Is he washes his feet, calls him friend, feeds him, calls him friend at the very last. And Judas, he's having this moment of mass remorse. He's realizing what's happening. And this is the only gospel that has the account of Judas's death. And I was wondering why. And Judas is filled with remorse. And so he's like, I've sinned. I've betrayed an innocent man. And they're going, well, that's your problem. To say nothing of the fact that they know they paid for a murder. They know so well. They're like, well, we can't put this in the sanctuary money because, we bought blood for it. We bought the death of a human being with it. I guess we probably can't use this to go into the temple. No, you can't, no. And yet, it's more than that. That Judas, filled with remorse, throws it in and goes and hangs himself. It's not like he can ask Jesus for forgiveness. Jesus is about to be beaten by Roman soldiers for what he's done. He probably doesn't even know that Jesus can forgive him. The disciples, well, they're certainly not going to. Simon Peter, little bit of a temper sometimes, like cut off the servant's ear. Judas, probably on the chopping block on this one. Peter would probably put him to death, especially with the anguish he's currently in. All the disciples are probably in such a heart-wrecked state, none of them want anything to do with Judas. So he's feeling completely outcast, completely alone, despite the fact that God said, this is going to happen. And it makes me think about Judas's remorse and Peter's remorse. And I sometimes wonder for a moment, what if God forgave Judas? And this isn't to say of any kind of deep, real theology in regards to Judas. This is a question about how we are to respond when others betray us. Something obviously we cannot do. Be forgiving like Judas, forgiving Judas, if that is what happened. Because I have to believe that he does. Because it's already written, it's already planned out. Just like he gives Peter the opportunity here, later in Acts. But Judas kills himself. He's such an outcast that not even the other disciples, when it's like, yeah, Judas, he did this, he was crooked, he was bad with money. And I am not defending the man in any way, shape, or form. I am pondering and pontificating and questioning. God's consistent nature is to be forgiving and loving. God knows the heart. True justice requires mercy. Because if a person is truly sorrowful for what they have done, justice must see that they have the opportunity to correct it. Because if you put to death the truly mournful, you've never given them the opportunity to rectify it. So you've compounded wrong with wrong. This is the kind of tension that I am curious about. The tension that I ponder about God's perfect mercy and his justice. Because if Judas is, as it says in the text, filled with remorse, truly remorseful, wanting to repent, wishing he could take it back, then God takes that into account. Just as he takes what we do into account. And the two prophecies here, the Zechariah reference and the Jeremiah reference, they have me also thinking. Because Jeremiah is the, doing all this great work for Israel, and the entire thing is valued at 30 pieces of silver. A pittance sum. The other one, buy this field, set it right. You've got the opportunity to do this. It's this arrangement of understanding that we don't always see the big picture. We don't always see it from God's perspective. We don't always understand what God told Job at the end of the book, that he created Leviathan and Behemoth. I don't think we often take a moment to realize that in the Word, God himself says, what's it to you if I am to use some of my pots to hold dung and others to hold my glory? Because it's God's prerogative to do that as the maker. And I find myself wondering, just for a moment, and inviting you for conversation here too, what if forgiveness is not about dismissing the action? What if it is not about sticking your head in the sand? What if it's not about saying, oh, it's water under the bridge, and repressing everything that comes with it? What if it is about truly taking a moment to work through the pain, through the anguish, through the difficulty, the sufferings, the places where we are tense and defensive, and actually working into a place of understanding each other? None of this we can do by our own power, mind you. I believe it was Jeremiah who said, who can know the human heart but God? It's such a corrupt and foul thing. Deceit comes from it. It's a twisted thing. It is one that needs to be renewed, made new, made whole. So that kind of forgiveness is optional. So that when somebody knifes you in the back, you can truly forgive them. It's like, well, how could I be forgiving somebody who's knifing me in the back in that moment? The same way Stephen in Acts says, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, as they're stoning him to death. As he's calling out the leaders and everybody else, saying, no, see, you've done this again and again and again. You did it to the prophets of old, you do it to the prophets now, you do it every time. He calls it out. They stone him to death. And he prays for their forgiveness. Because he understands that they are lost. They are lost to this cyclical nature, this cycle of pain and sorrow, a tilt-a-hurl of agony that we seem to be obsessed with following and riding ad infinitum as humans. And so I ask again, what if God forgave Judas? What if his mercy is so true, which, going by everything he's done, it is. Abram was told not to bring Lot, brought him anyway. Told not to lie about his sister dead anyway, God covered him. All the way through, God has been consistent. true to his word, true to his character. Not calling guilty innocent, and not calling innocent guilty. Understanding the heart, though. Because all the times in the wilderness, poisonous snakes, earth opening up, all these different times where the people were punished in the wilderness, a place where many people start to get the idea of, oh, that's the wrath of God. You know, the finger, pew, and you're dead. Smite me, oh mighty smiter crap. No. Because if you actually read it, the only ones who have that upon them are those who were doing exactly what they weren't supposed to do. Knowing that they weren't supposed to do it. And the ones who went along with the crowd, egging it on. Justice was dealt to those who needed it done to. God seeing truly the heart. And yes, it is almost always accompanied with intercessory prayer. And I find myself thinking, what if we prayed for our countries like this? What if we prayed for our leadership like this? Because yes, there is much foolishness abound in leadership. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you find on. Politics is quite painful. Because it's a game of insulting each other and hurting each other. And it's a popularity contest where the person who wins is the one who casts down most. And I find myself thinking about God really knowing the heart. I find myself thinking about places where Pharaoh was offered so many opportunities to soften his heart, and in response instead hardened it. And so it became that God hardened their heart, or hardened his heart, to use it for his glory. And now we're back to Judas. God uses it. Now I'm not going to compare Pharaoh to Judas on this one. Because, well, God did not call Pharaoh friend. God called Moses friend. I find myself wondering, or at least walked with him, my apologies, idea. I find myself wondering, God is consistent, the same yesterday, today, and forever. God is loving. And if this works in both directions, then the God of the Old Testament can't be bipolar from the God of the New Testament because that lacks consistency. So the love we see that Jesus pours out, the love that does not call good evil or evil good, the love that calls out what is wrong, will make a scene, but not to cause destruction, to make a point. Flipping tables and chasing people out with a whip. It's a bit much, and at the same time it's not. Because is he doing it the way that is actually done, or is he just doing it to get a point? Nobody says he flipped the tables into their laps or hit them with the whips. And most people, when they hear a whip, are going to run like hell. But I digress, because it's kind of beside the point. God is consistent with his love. He calls out what needs to be called out. And when a heart is truly repentant and sets itself before him, he hears the cries of the heart. When Hannah wept, he heard. When so many of his children all throughout the word cry, weep out, he hears the tears, he hears the prayers, he hears the sighs. He hears those places. If he's consistent in this, then what is it we believe we could do that he would not welcome us if we truly want repentance, if we truly want to do different? Not a place of, oh, I'm going to pray like hell on my deathbed. A place of true relationship. I'm tired of adding to the darkness. I don't want it anymore. It grieves me when I add to the darkness. Because in the darkness there is grief. And I don't want to add anymore. I am tired of living in a cycle of hurt and backstabbery and foolishness. I want out. I need more. I need real. And only the one who was and is to come is real. There is a little bit of language funny there in this. Israel as opposed to the God of Israel. Come on, God's got a great sense of humor. And He's trying to get us to understand fully. He wants us. Well, I've betrayed my friends. God knows. He loves you anyway. And the invitation is there. Don't harden your heart. Don't become so willing to get along and go along with darkness that in the end, seeing suffering makes one numb. Does not draw a place of any response whatsoever. Because as I find myself pondering the word and the reactions of people seeing the buddings of World War III or the insanity going on in this world, I find myself praising for consistency and thinking about how so often a utopia and a dystopia are the same story depending on what side you're on. And it's heartbreaking that we do this as people. We stand on each other, we crush each other. We act like a mob of raging and ravishing souls trying to climb up a ladder, desperate to get out of the pit without realizing that that Tower of Babel is not going to work. Climbing over the top of bodies to try and get to the top is never going to work. And it doesn't have to. Because the one who saves, the one who we instinctively want to be near, yet do everything we can to ignore sometimes, came down. Came down from heaven to earth. Came down from the mountain to dwelling. Came to the earth to save. The choice is simply there. The choice is simple. And do you wish to continue climbing over the top of each other's corpses in a rotting, fleshly fiend straight out of nightmares? A legion of souls desperate to escape the pit and the darkness, consuming away at the eternal of everything. The repetitious cycle. Or do you want different? Do you want out? Do you want real? Do you want to be pulled from the fire? Do you want to be rescued? Do you want to live? This is what we are talking about here. Not some religious BS. The actual relationship, the actual Lord who sees Judas's pain as he's hanging himself. And I find myself wondering, did Jesus weep for Judas, knowing that his friend hurt so much he killed himself? And I find myself wondering, the kind of love that forgives Peter for denying 3 times that he even knows him. The kind of love that comes to earth to die in our place so we might be in a relationship with God. The kind of love that is greater than we can fathom. This is the kind of love we're shown. Why do we harden our hearts in times of stress? Why do we close ourselves off when we hurt? It is reactionary. And it is something we need to lay before the Lord. Because, yes, people hurt. And broken people break things and try to break people. Yet we know no weapon formed against us shall prosper. And we know that His grace is sufficient. We know that He is greater. We know that He is the I am. So, why not hold to it? Why not seek Him and leave behind the cursed places in the dark that hurt so much? Because He wants us. And we should want Him back. Because He loves us like that. And if that kind of compassion and mercy and everything seems foolish, why? Why does it seem foolish? What in here is different from the places out there? Why would it seem so odd to love like that when that's how He loves us? Not by our own power, by His. Not by our own ability, but by His. It's our places of weakness that we see His strength. Do we not think this applies on every level? On even forgiveness too. It is about truly wanting to turn to Him and laying down the way of the world, because the way of the world has never and will never work. The one who made us, who came to save us, giving away free. It's all in here. And it's a place I beg for you to go. And if you like the version I'm using, it's the NLT. New Living Translation. I'll see you guys later. Hold strong. Don't give up. Because in the place of this world, like we're going to see here, of such pain that He endures. And He endures knowing the pain we go through. So as we continue on from 11 on in, with Jesus' trial before Pilate, the mocking, the crucifixion, death, all of it right here, this moment, where God makes a way when there is no way, so that the world's game need never be played again. The way of the enemy, the chains of sin and death be broken, and we truly be set free, because He has redeemed us and truly set us free. I know, lyrical, a little lyric-y at the end there. Still, I love the connection. I love the music of it. I love the place where God shows He loves. And so, when we have those moments, when we realize just how much we have screwed up, when we realize just how broken we are, we realize just how much we contributed to the destruction of this world, and to the deaths of our loved ones and their lives around us, by our words, by our actions. When we realize those places, we do not have to kick ourselves. We turn to the one who says, "You are healed, go and sin no more." Well, how are you supposed to sin no more? That's part of the relationship. That's part of digging into Him. Because Paul knows that if I said I never wrestled with sin, I'd be a liar. Well, yeah. So how can you go and sin no more? That's where the relationship comes in. I'm serious. I'm very serious. Because it becomes a place of understanding in ways that I think I am still being learned. And in ways that are so counter and so revolutionary and so different. So counterintuitive and yet so logical and so pure. It is more real than anything else. So go dig into real. I'll see you guys in there, and I'll see you guys then when we dig into more. May His favor be upon you, and don't give up. Don't give in. He'll see you through. If you're still standing, He's the one carrying you. I'll see you then.